We will avenge your brother, Norio. All the monks who died here.
I don't seek revenge, but I will fight for peace.
War brings out the worst in us. The unimaginable levels of death, destruction, and personal losses fuel a side to us we never knew existed. It'll challenge our beliefs, morals, ethics, values, and our resolve. It's quite difficult to hang on to the life and the person you once were before the sounds of war barreled its way into your life, toppling everything you once knew. Seldom do people end up unscathed, returning to themselves the moment peace washes back over them and their loved ones can hopefully rest easy, either in a respectable grave or at their ancestral home. The main stories of Ghost of Tsushima all serve a purpose. At its core, they all aim to teach Jin a lesson. Lady Moscow, for instance, sacrificed her honor, throwing it all away in the most extreme effort to avenge her family, caring less for what she considered important before everything was taken from her. All she wanted was the blood of the people responsible for her pain spilled by her own hands. I think she's a cautionary tale to not get consumed by revenge, as she's at the mercy of her own emotions, and we see Jin throughout the story of Ghost of Tsushima give in to his emotions from time to time. Sensei Ishikawa's tale of hunting down his rogue student Tomoe would result in him confessing to Jin he regrets never investing in creating a family for himself. All he has, all he ever had, all he'll ever be, would be defined by the way of the bow, allowing it to consume him. Tomoe was a product of his success, the one chance he had at a family, and now, because he chose to commit to his honor and teachings, he pushed away that one chance of becoming more than just his body of work. Ishikawa's tale gives Jin a taste of what would happen should he let the legend of the ghost consume him, and the code of conduct of how he operated on the battle dictate the way that he lived his life beyond just serving those that he swore to protect. You must be cautious to not let the ghost take over his identity and he becomes nothing beyond that. Norio, the warrior monk from Cedar Temple, too has his own lesson to share. While his journey does end in revenge and anger, I think Norio's journey has the lesson to never lose focus on the mission, on your vision, who you are, and not to let the most horrible experiences change that, no matter how unimaginable the pain it will bring is.
Everyone who rode south from Cedar Temple, all gone, except me. They deserve to live. I'm the one who should be dead.
Norio's tale begins with regret and uncertainty. He's the last of the warrior monks who traveled from the north to provide aid to the southern part of the island that was suffering from the Mongol invaders. He details how, on their journey, they were slowed to a crawl by a brutal storm, so they took up shelter in a farmstead to rest a few hours. This moment of reprieve from the hard ride was short-lived, though, as he awoke to screams in the main house of the farmstead engulfed in flames. A band of Mongol raiders had caught the monks by surprise, who were all taken in chains to Kanada. While they were in captivity, the monks would be kept in a shallow pit, starved and tortured, until one by one, each monk would be taken out of the pit, tortured and killed. Some even burned to death. All of these horrible actions would be committed within earshot of the rest, who were apprehensively waiting for their turn as they stayed huddled in the darkness of the pit. When it came to be Norio's turn to be pulled out, his brother Enjo, the hero of the warrior monks, his achievements in bravery and success in securing the safety of those he swore to protect earned him the title of the Guardian. Enjo was the most revered and ultimately the leader, and he sacrificed himself to save his little brother, Norio. With Enjo's death, Norio patiently waited for his turn, until, in a turn of events, he was freed by Lord Shimada and Jin. With this freedom came a sense of hope, fueled by a dire sense of urgency and a touch of survivor's guilt that'll slowly get a little worse. The Mongol invasion now grasped every corner of Tsushima. All the warrior monks save Norio were killed, and all the monks who were still alive were in disarray and completely vulnerable. With each of the island's temple status unknown, Norio would set out to unify them, beginning with Akashima village. The village was spared by Mongol pillaging by the actions of the monk's most skilled healer, Hochi. Hochi, while only in a few missions and has a small on-screen presence, does a great job at exposing the culture within the monk society. He demonstrates what would be considered the typical monk mentality, to offer resistance by way of helping, by strengthening one's faith and helping save lives instead of taking them. Norio shares Hochi's view on warrior monks being driven by anger and hatred, while he implies Hochi's refusal to offer armed resistance is a coward's way, putting others' lives in danger.
What's the problem?
Mongols are gathering nearby, preparing to strike.
We should evacuate to Castle Canada.
Evacuate and the Mongols will hunt you down. Not one of you will live to see Kanada's walls.
But we won't have blood on our hands.
Go tell the village your plan for them, Hochi. I'd like to see that.
While I wish Hochi was kept around a bit longer to continue to explore the opposing mentalities here, his death is undeniably a significant one for Norio. After Jin and Norio decide it's best to stand their ground and fight whatever Mongol patrols are thrown at Akashima village, a lone Mongol warrior manages to sneak up on Norio, nearly killing him. But in the ultimate sacrifice, Hochi would throw himself in way of the blow, saving Norio's life. This valiant effort would intensify a gnawing feeling Norio's already been having, and that's survivor's guilt. While he and Jin sit at the burning pyre of Hochi's body, Norio would lament how he should be dead. He's the last warrior monk. Everyone he rode with to the south of Tsushima is all dead. They all suffered a fate he should have been subjected to. But because of his brother, he was spared. Now, thanks to Hochi's sacrifice, he was spared yet again. Hochi's death comes right after Norio had just opened up to Jin about not having an optimistic view for the future. Since his brother Enjo's now gone, everything he envisioned before the war isn't so clear anymore. His path and his belief system in the monastery, the idea of settling down, having a family, having his kids grow old with Enjo's children is a dream that was all ripped away from him, but at the same time he feels a sense of responsibility. He has a debt to pay to Enjo and the rest of the monks who sacrificed their lives in this godforsaken war. His hope for the future and belief system suffered a major blow with his brother's death, but the intense feeling of grief and loss is only overpowered through the feeling of having to live for the people who gave up their lives. Hochi now joined those ranks. Jin, as he does with Lady Moscow, would speak of the events at Komoda Beach and relate to Norio's feelings of questioning why it was he who had to survive, and not just allow it to go the way of his fallen brothers. Jin's conversations with Norio appear to be much more vulnerable in nature, rather than just trying to get the other person to understand that they're not the only ones who suffered loss. Jin and so many others understand their pain, but they must rise above it and be better. With Norio, it's more of a kindred spirit. Jin does make some similarities between the monks and the samurai. He even likens the abbot's last sutra to a samurai's death poem, rallying all the monks to the defense of Kushi Temple, reinforcing what they believe as well as being humble enough to recognize anyone can follow their teachings. It's just paramount they stand together, create a unified front, and defend the temples, their last beacons of hope. Whenever Norio expresses insecurity in his ability to keep the monks safe and become even a fraction of the hero his brother was, Jin would be right there to remind him Akashima Village, Kushi Temple, and Kushida Temple were all rescued by his actions, and people would not forget that. Jin's influence on Norio is pretty hard to understate, as in the beginning Norio was willing to let an entire group of unarmed monks get slaughtered by a band of Mongols, believing the defense of a temple and with it generations of teachings were far more valuable than a few monks' lives.
I can't! The Buddha! The Abbot's Sutra!
Are they worth more than the monks' lives? I can't save them alone.
Centuries of learning reside in this temple. I can't let it burn.
But you'll let the monks burn.
I will die for this temple. Do what you have to.
Jin would swing him in the other way, and along with that even teach him how to not jump to conclusions, to keep a level head, effectively track someone, and how important it is that a victory is achieved at the hands of the people, making them feel as if it was won by their own hands, strengthening the message that they are all beacons of hope themselves. These are all teachings Norio would put to great use when he created the entire effort to retake Cedar Temple from the Mongols, displaying an incredible level of leadership and strategy that he attributed to the Ghost. He gathered support from all temples that he helped save, and everything was going much better for Norio. He seemingly was no longer living in the shadow of his brother, who instead of mourning his and everyone else's loss, Norio now rode valiantly for. It was a reinvigorated effort at determination that sadly was derailed when he discovered his brother Enjo was in fact still alive.
I held on to see you. But I can't live like this.
With the liberation of Cedar Temple came the horrible reality of Enjo still being alive. He had fed the Mongols information on the best way to bring down the monks. He told them about Hochi, their greatest healer, the abbot, the monks' leader, Kushi and Kushida Temple, and the significance they had in the monks' faith. All of this was shared with the monks in an effort to spare his brother Norio. Enjo, though, wasn't spared any mercy for his cooperation. He was beaten, burned, and mutilated with his arms and legs cut off. He tells Norio he held out just long enough to see his brother one last time, but he refuses to live like this, asking his brother to do him the respect and end his misery. A request Norio would oblige, but not until he gets the name of the Mongol responsible for Enjo's suffering.
His name is Kharcho, the one who burned my brother and cut off his limbs.
This Haricho is among the dead?
Not yet.
Despite only knowing his name, Norio would manage to track the Mongol responsible for his brother's suffering. As he says, everything Jin taught him, everything the ghost has taught him, he put to great use to track this man down. The entire last tale of Norio, Jin would plead with him to remember he promised to never swing his naginata in hatred. It was a move dedicated only to saving those that needed saving and protection. It's not a monk's duty to seek revenge, to which Norio responds by saying he was a brother first, despite the monks at Cedar Temple needing his leadership. One that was especially vital was he was the last warrior monk. All the training, preparations, and newfound hope Norio gave them at the onset of Cedar Temple's liberation was all pushed aside as he became determined to end the man who mutilated and tortured his brother. Norio would recite a prayer his brother wrote after one of his legendary victories. Then he would tell Jin to rest. Vengeance will be redeemed in blood come sunrise.
My lord! Please, help! He's gone mad!
Norio. Seek refuge in Amida Buddha. Who did this?
Norio. He's lost his mind.
There's a distinction between an eye for an eye and blind vengeance, making sure one receives their due justice versus unleashing all the wrath and anger that you have deep inside, finding some type of joy in unleashing it on someone else. What Norio was going through was pure hatred, consumed by the wrath and pain of finding his brother in the state that he did. Norio would descend on a Mongol encampment fueled by blind rage. Bystanders who witnessed Norio's assault mentioned they initially thought their prayers were answered, but Norio has lost his mind. He wasn't there to rescue but to punish. As Jin makes his way through the Mongol camp, entire buildings are engulfed in flames. Mongol warriors crawl around fighting to cling to life, while Harshu is burned alive. A payback, Norio says, filled him with great joy. But now, he admits to wanting to give up, to throw away his faith, and move on from the whole ordeal. It's crazy to think he single-handedly saved the monks from complete destruction and carved out his own myth, finally stepping out of the shadow of his brother, stepping out of the shadow of the myth and legendary guardian. Yet after so much hope and promise that was given to himself and everyone that followed him, heading into Cedar Temple, coming out, it took him back to a place far worse than he was in the aftermath of what he believed was Enjo's death the first time. A death that was exacerbated and made a whole lot worse by Hochi's death, as it reminded him of how his brother sacrificed him for Norio. Interesting side note as well, this image of death and destruction I thought perfectly fits the idea Hochi had of warrior monks being driven by anger and hatred. If they were, and this was a result of that, Lord bless their enemies as they'll be better off dead. But with Harshu dead, and finding it difficult to return to the life of being a monk, Norio resigns. He says that he can no longer be a monk, he refuses, he can't go back to what he was before. To which Jin chastises him in what I think is one of the best conversations in the entire game.
I'm no longer a monk.
You don't get to give up. We all have regrets and broken promises. But this island needs you. The last warrior monk of Cedar Temple.
I can't go back to what I was before this.
I'm not asking you to go back. I'm asking you to keep your faith and move forward.
Thank you, Jin.
I'll see you at Cedar Temple.
And that's the tale of Norio, the last warrior monk. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Out of all the stories and tales in Ghost of Tsushima, which one is your favorite? Which character is your favorite? Now, I said this in another video's comment section. I most likely will be compiling all these videos up into one long-ass video to just binge. So do look forward to that, if that's something you're even interested in. Also, what game would you like me to cover next? I've said this before, I have some irons in the fire already. I'm working on Deacon from Days Gone, Vito Scaletta from Mafia 2, Nathan Drake from the Uncharted series, as well as a few others. Those are obviously going to take a lot longer, but just for some smaller type of videos to hold you over in the meantime, what would be a gaming series you would like to see? let me know. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.